Welcome to Executive Access, created for motivated professionals. This is your home for real talk with executives about their career journeys, leadership practices, successes, and learnings along the way. I am your host, Jamie Tazi. I am speaking with Mike Noonan, head soccer coach for the Clemson Tigers national champions men's soccer team. I asked him what leadership principles and approaches most contributed to his consistent winning results across 15 seasons at Clemson, prior to that at Brown, prior to that at New Hampshire. And he spoke of his affinity for Carol Dweck's growth mindset, the importance of leading with values and a team mission, and really listening to players, including getting them to talk. Mike is a deeply curious leader who is constantly reading and learning from others. You will enjoy hearing about his others-focused mindset. Let's dive in. All right, well, welcome, Mike Noonan, the head men's soccer coach at Clemson University. You have been there since 2010. Is this your 15th season so far?
It is. Yeah, came in its 16th year, 15th season.
All right. Fantastic. And just a little bit about your background. You were a soccer player at Middlebury College, and you were inducted into the Athletic Hall of Fame. You also played professionally at the American Indoor Soccer Association. You were I think your first head coach position was at Wheaton College. You spent a couple years there, completely turned the team around in terms of a winning season in your second year. 4 seasons at University of New Hampshire. I have a lot of friends in New Hampshire who are going to be happy to hear you on there. Took that team to the NCAA tournament, I believe. You were at Brown 15 years, won the Ivy League conference many times, maybe 8 times, big winning record, and now you're at Clemson. So I'm thrilled. I said, I want to have a sports coach on this podcast, and it has to be soccer because that's my favorite sport. And I reached out to you blind. I'm like, he's never going to respond to me, but you did. So I thank you for that. And I thank you for joining us today. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm honored to be on here and honored to be the sports coach of choice.
Yeah, absolutely. You were my first and only choice, honestly. So, and by the way, you gave me major street credibility with my kids, because when I told my boys that I was having you on the podcast, they were like, no way. And then they actually started watching my podcast. They're like, maybe your podcast is actually a thing, Mom. So thanks for that.
There you go. There you go. Well, anything we can do to help a mom with her 3 sons.
I love that. Thank you. Well, one thing that as I got to know and did my homework around your background, I saw that we both share a real big passion and belief in Carol Dweck's growth mindset. So I wanted to make my first question, what are you doing to learn and grow these days, Mike?
Well, you can see over my shoulder, I'm incessantly reading. I think, one of my, I'm very, very curious about everything. And that's why I came across Carol Dweck. It wasn't one of those things that she was recommended to me. It was, it's a mindset book, and I picked it up and I started reading. And I said, this is almost common sense in my field of work, because you see it so often, so frequently. You can see the differences. It's generally pretty drastic because we're dealing with talent, right? And talent identification. Those that feel that they are talented and there's a ceiling to it, and those that feel that they can constantly grow and get better. And so, yeah, I don't know, it might have been 15 years ago or so when I came across it. And so, yeah, I'm constantly trying to learn. I've been a college head coach for close to 35 years, maybe more, but I've never felt that I've approached that master coach plateau. So there's always something else to learn. There's always something else to do. I'm consistently, watching games or talking to leaders like you do. And it's not just in my sport. I mean, the Olympics is a great factory for me. And watching the Olympics and elite athletes perform and listening to elite coaches, obviously in our sport, the World Cup and European Championships, et cetera, the Copa America that just came through this summer. So, I'm just a lifelong learner.
Are you reading anything particularly exceptional these days or recently?
I read so much. Not a what was the most, to be honest with you, I've just been reading John Feinstein, a couple of John Feinstein's books, and
Hmm.
they're more sports related than
Okay.
they are, Great Walk Spoiled. And I just read the book. I can't remember the title, but it was the book of that he started with at Indiana when he followed Bobby Knight, which isn't that pretty a story, but it's an
Ah,
interesting one for sure.
very good. Yeah, I'm like you. I kind of mix it up. One day I'm reading Les Miserables because I felt like I should read some of the classics, and that's a tough one to get through. Let me tell you, I like the, I like
Yeah.
the performance version a lot better. And then one day I'm reading a mindset book, and the next day I'm reading a Dean Koontz novel when I just want to chill out. Right, so I'm all over the board as well.
Yeah.
So, what is it
Yeah.
about? I have to ask you this. What is it about this beautiful game, right? I kind of got pulled into it because I had to. My husband was a big soccer player. And when I first got pregnant, I was like, he said, our kids are going to play soccer. And I said, no, well, I mean, they're going to do what they want to do. And he said, absolutely, as long as they play soccer. So I kind of had to join it. But I will tell you, we just got back from the Euro Cup in Germany. We watched two
Uh-huh.
quarterfinal games and experienced the passion on the streets, passion like I've never seen before. And there's just something about it, the passion and the love for it, and just the way my kids have been raised in it. And I think it is making them better human beings. What is it about soccer?
Yeah, and the European Championships, I think, are even better than the World Cup
Hmm.
because they're not as corporate and there's more jingoism and nationalism in it. Did you see the Dutch team play at all?
Just on the TV, not in person. Yeah.
Just TV,
Yeah.
yeah. If you if you ever went and watched the Dutch team play in person at the Euros, yeah, it's just it's infectious. And where you were, I'm sure it was. And that's what it is. The sport is about motion, but it's really about emotion, and most sports are. Um, and that's what really triggers and why there's so much fan support and that's what soccer is throughout the world. It's an emotional game that is deep seated and deep rooted in the cultures of every country. And I got involved because unlike your husband, my dad didn't know anything about it,
Hmm.
and he couldn't tell me what to do. Right.
So that's what you're
And
saying. That's why you liked it because you could just go in.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
yeah. And it was, yeah, my dad knew everything about everything, and I played baseball, and he knew baseball, and but when I started playing soccer, it was more on my terms. And then he came over. Now, I mean, he passed away last year, but he was a mad soccer fan, and I would get texts from him, first text after every game, telling me what we should have done and what we could have done, and the rest, I think. But he didn't know the sport, and I grew to love it because what it is, and what it is the player's game, and it's not a coach directed game. If you look at it, because of the nature of the game, the running clock, there's no timeouts, there's no real plays. There's some set plays, but not much in. So the players are in control of all the decisions.
Yes.
And what I say um, all the time is that it reflects life better than any other sport
Hmm.
because the players and teams who make the best decisions the quickest are going to be the most successful. And in life, the people who make the best decisions for themselves, maybe not necessarily the quickest, are going to be the most successful people. And so that's the principle behind it. I felt empowered when I started playing the game because it was my game and
Hmm.
I could make it up as I went.
Hmm.
And I played with my friends, and there was joy, and then there was passion. And I think in any walk of life, if you have joy and passion, it's something you're going to fall in love with.
It's amazing how easy it is to do the things you love and how good you are at the things you love. I think it's just because you pour that
Mm.
passion into everything and you're doing the extra bit and you're just reading about it as you are currently. Thank you for that. Did you always know that you wanted to be a coach? Like when you were at Middlebury, was that your goal to pursue coaching, or did that come about after?
A little bit of both. I'm one of five, and I always had a knack for coaching. My younger brother, I would coach his teams when he was in junior high school and when I came home from college in high school. And I enjoyed it. My mother's a teacher, lifelong educator, and really that's all I am is I'm a teacher in short pants, and my
Hmm.
medium is the game. And so yeah, I did enjoy the teaching aspect and the coaching aspect when I was in Middlebury, but initially I was going to go to law school. I'm very, very competitive, and I thought I'd do criminal law, and I worked a lot down in Washington D.C. in politics, and that was the route that I thought I might go.
Hmm.
But then I had the opportunity to play professional soccer, and then had a career-ending injury. And while I was lying in bed trying to think about what I was going to do because the doctor told me I wouldn't play anymore,
Hmm.
I realized that my best experiences, my best friends, got to travel throughout the world, came from the game. So I wanted to stay involved in the game. So I called my college coach and asked him if he needed some help, and I started helping him.
That's great. And there's a lot of people who are glad you did that for sure. The one thing that one of the things I was most curious about is, in corporate America, we'll say, anybody can have a good year, but driving consistent, strong results across season after season is much more difficult. And you do that, right? And I'm wondering what the leadership principles or approaches that you put in place that you most lean on, would you say, that contribute to that success? I don't know whether it's you've got me thinking about, wait, do you coach to best decision and quickest, or is it something else? What is it about your leadership that you think is driving the consistent long-term results?
It'll be no surprise to your listeners that there are core values that we live to and that we have for our program. And I brought from Brown. They were evolved and developed by my student leadership group at Brown.
Hmm.
We sat down. Finally, again, I have to tell you, I'm a grinder, not a genius. So it takes me a while to get to something. So after about 5 or 6 years at Brown, I sat down and I said, well, guys, what is it that we actually do? And why do we do it? And we came up with a core set of values that I've basically coached to for the last 20 years or
Hmm.
so. One of the things we decided was that we're not in a professional environment, a professional soccer environment. We're in an educational environment. So one of the first ones is emphasize education. And along with the education, it's not just your academic education, or there's so much growth that goes on in college that it's your social education, your soccer or your football education. So there's that. So there's different tenets to each one of the core values. The last one obviously is have fun,
Hmm.
because we play a game, and if it's not fun and enjoyable, then why play the game? And the number of them in between there, learn to be a great teammate, um, uh, give back to the community. Soccer's a grassroots sport, and we feel that we can give a lot of ourselves to our current communities wherever we are. The only one that has changed or was added recently, not that recently, but a few years ago, is I looked around my locker room at Clemson, and we had players from 5 continents, and you know there was a lot going on with the Black Lives Matter movement, and we had done it without saying it, but so we came back to embracing diversity,
Hmm.
and that was a core value that we added to our list most recently.
And was this sort of like at Brown, a bottoms up movement where the students and the coaches kind of got together and added it, or was it something that you added and kind of brought to the team?
No, that was added when I was here at Clemson about 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
But was it this? It was with the
But yes,
students. Yeah. Okay.
yeah. So we revisit these core values every year,
Oh. Okay.
and ask each team and what they mean to them, and have them, the upperclassmen teach them to the younger classmen, and so we revisit them every year, and that's how there have been a couple of years when I just assumed because you put them on a wall that the new players would understand because that's the way we live our lives. But I realized pretty quickly uh, that that's not the case, and they actually needed to come to life for the new players so they could live them and but better than the current players to make them come to life for them. So that's
That's
what we do.
great. And coming to life, like when you say great teammate, I imagine there'd be everybody would say, yeah, we need to be great teammates. But actually
Yeah.
describing, what does that mean, right? It means I don't know, you don't harp on each other, or you pick each other up when you're down, or you clean up the locker room. I don't know what it means, but you get
Yeah.
into that level.
Yeah. Well, when we say be a great teammate, it's really three prongs to that. We're other centered.
Other centered.
We're
Okay. Mhm.
other centered, self-sacrificing, and humble. And humble doesn't mean that you're not proud of what you do, but it means that we do it with a sense of humility, that we're normal people doing something abnormal every day because of the talents that we have. So that's what being a good teammate at Clemson means.
Excellent. I love that. And the others focus. I don't know if you've read this book, since you're an avid reader, Outward Mindset by Arbinger. You can pick it up
I
right now.
haven't, but I'm writing it. I'm writing it down.
Oh, you're ready to, okay. You're going to love that one. I found that 3 or 4 years ago, and it's a quick read. And I'm almost obsessed about outward mindset as I am about growth mindset. So you have to drop me in line and tell me what you think. But my sense
I
is
will for sure.
based on what you're saying, you're going to be like, oh, this is what we do, but it kind of gives you a new lens on it. So excellent. So it's the value. So you found that creating those values, describing them, and then you brought them to Clemson and the practice of making them real every year. That's one of the core tenets of how you can create consistent results.
Right, and that is consistency,
Mm-hmm.
because the core values that we have, they're easy to memorize. They're very hard to live every single day and live to every single day. The standard's very, very high here, right? It's really high when you're at a place like Clemson, and I'm not just talking about your athletic performance. It's everything you do in life and the sacrifices you have to make. So you have to have a framework, and within that framework comes freedom, right? And that's what our game is, and that's what we try to allow our players to be, even here in the environment at Clemson, is that there's freedom, but you have to have some type of framework to live by.
Amazing. And how do you, because I sometimes help organizations go through this process of creating their values, even their vision and mission statement. But if it does just hang on the wall, you're not going to get what you really want out of it. So how do you, as a leader, make sure that the team is actually acting that way every day?
Well, again, the simple things, right? And it comes down, plenty of books written about the little things, right? And who moved my cheese and all the rest of it. But
Mhm.
the little things count. So are they on time, right? What do they look like when they get to the facility in the morning, right? You know, how do they treat other people? It's again, it becomes pretty obvious. How do they treat each other? You can listen, you use all your senses to evaluate those things, right? As they get into the locker room, I can tell whether they have high energy or low energy just by listening to the locker room. I can tell, my phone is not next to my bed at night when I go to sleep, because the culture of the team, I know, is living the core values. Now they make mistakes, don't get
Sure.
me wrong, but I've gotten to the point where I don't have to have. When I first got to Clemson, that wasn't the case. I would say for about 3 or 4 years, but they're 30, 20, 18 to 24-year-old young men, right? And then they're growing, they're learning, but for the most part, we talk a lot about there are two types of people at Clemson when you play soccer. You're either a Clemson student or you're a Clemson soccer player, and they're completely different. And you choose that. I don't choose it for you.
Um, I think I know what you mean about the freedom in that, right? If you can create the clarity of what's expected and get people and your players that are willing to live into that. Yes, there's expectations, right? But that creates freedom because you're giving them the playbook for what success looks like on and off the field. And that's where the freedom comes in. Gotcha.
And thus the consistency too,
And that's the
right?
consistency.
Year in and year out. The ball may bounce the right way, you know, for you one year and not the next year. And last year, obviously during the national championship run, it bounced the right way for us. But it, it you know, it's not something that always is going to happen for you. But our mission last year, we wrote the mission statement. It had nothing to do with winning the national championship. It ended with, at the end of the season, you will have memories that will last a lifetime.
Hmm.
And we happened to win the national championship. Said nothing about winning and losing. And I asked the guys, in Louisville when we got in the locker room after winning the national championship, I said, "You guys going to remember this for a lifetime?" And I think everybody said yes.
Yeah, I'm sure they did. Congratulations on that one. Well, so what do you say
Thank you.
to now you're talking to somebody who is like, I'm like, yes, you're preaching to the choir. I am such a big believer in culture and how it, culture eats strategy for breakfast and all these things. But for those who might be a little bit skeptical, but really, coach, like that's what it is. How do you think? What is it? What's the link between the values, the end that you're putting in place, and the behaviors, and to how that actually translates to winning on the field in a game like soccer? Is it the discipline aspect of it? Is it the way the team is bonding together? What would you say?
I think it's all the above,
Okay,
right? And again, because of the sport, and like I said, the decision making that has to happen, uh, they make choices, right?
hmm,
And those choices are how close they're going to become as a team, how disciplined they're going to become within the structure of what we've given them. In those things, they take time, right? And if you've been following anything about college athletics, right, we're trying to give clarity in chaos right now. It's
for
absolute
sure,
chaos,
for sure.
and so you have to continue to break it down and keep it as simple as you possibly can. Right? I mean, simplicity is the key to, I think, any success. And coaches in general, including myself, we overcomplicate things sometimes. And when I find myself doing that, well, I've got a great staff that helps me with that. But at the same point, uh, that's when I catch myself, and that's when you're looking out on the field and you're going, that doesn't look like it's supposed to look like,
Hmm.
or these players aren't responding the way that we've trained them to, and what are the reasons behind it? And more often than not, you go back to the source and you go back to the players and you listen to your players because they're the ones who know. You listen to the participants in any organization and you need to get them to talk. And I have, like I said, I've got a great staff. We've got, we're very well resourced here at Clemson. I've got, you know, sports performance coaches. I've got strength coaches. I've got trainers. I've got doctors. I've got equipment managers. I've got 4 technical staff. And my job as the head coach is to listen to all of them, but also have them be listening to the players and communicating. And I think that's from a leadership standpoint, communication. I know it sounds boring. There's no great mystery to it, but the better your communication, the better your organization, the better success you're going to have.
Very interesting. My husband is a head coach of Porter Gaud school soccer, men's soccer, and he's amazing, and understands the game like nobody I've ever met, except maybe you right now. But I'm often giving him just like little things that I notice. Check in with that player. There's something going on. He looks different tonight, or he looks more tentative. What's happening? And I don't know what's going on. And Jeff has learned to listen to me. He's like, all right. And he's
Yeah.
maybe not as naturally that touchy-feely, but he does, and he always finds something. So I hear what you're saying is as much about the technical game and what's going on as what's going on for that player and how they can bring their best to any situation on and off the field.
Your intuition. Um, my mentor is a guy who is a sports psychologist over in England. Who's worked very, very high levels of the game over there. He was actually the national basketball coach of England and
Oh,
didn't have a background in soccer, but now has. But Bill would I would go over and I would visit Bill, and he would work with Manchester United and, you know, 6 Premier League clubs, and I'd go in to work, and he would wait, and the team would go out on the field, and he'd say, come get a cup of tea. And so we'd go into the canteen and get a cup of tea. And I said, then he'd walk out to the field afterwards, and I said, Bill, what are you doing? He goes, all I'm doing is watching people. You as coaches, you guys watch players, but I'm watching people. And it was uncanny what he would come up with. And then as he would walk back up the hill from training, he would have 1 or 2 players that he made sure that, you know, he connected with. And it was masterful work.
There was a game. There was a game last year that Porter was probably, everybody thought we would win. I mean, it was going to be competitive, but we felt pretty good about it. And I watched the opposing, Jeff had the team before the game in the locker room. I think he was speaking with them, and I watched the team warm up. And I thought to myself, oh boy, we're in trouble, right? The just something about the way they were warming up, the way they were together, the intensity, the camaraderie, the way the coach was speaking to them. And I wound up texting Jeff. I'm like, this team is bringing it. Like, this team has something going on. And our team was prepared as well, don't get me wrong, but I think struggled in a way that was different. And I could almost see it. I say to Jeff all the time, I can tell by how the teams are warming up what's going to happen on the field that day. So you're talking about unlocking that, creating the framework for that for the beginning, and then monitoring and listening as you go, which I love.
For sure.
Great. So what about recruiting? And I think this, you know, this may come pretty obvious from what you already told, but when you look at building your winning team, of course, technical skills for sure, you're looking for, but given everything you said, there must be other things and qualities that you're looking for in team members, the right team member, I think, that would fit well into that ecosystem. What are you looking for?
Well, again, just what you said, it's got to be the right fit more than anything else. And it's contextual at that point, right? When I was at Brown, the Ivy League context is very different. The recruiting there is very different than it is at Clemson. It's also the state and stage of your program. You know, our recruiting in 2010 is very different than our recruiting today after being 2-time national champion. Some would think it's easier now, but it's not. It's harder because there's more interest and there are more people, and you have to have more of a filter. Back in 2010, it was come change what's going on, and, you know, in trying to convince people to come. So it all changes, and it's contextual to state of your program, and also, you know, what where the bar set to compete more than anything else. So we found, again, same thing, grinding, not genius. After trial and error for 3 or 4 years here, we came up with a set of recruiting principles that fit for Clemson, and started applying them. And a lot of those came out of Coach Sweeney, Dabo Sweeney, and the way he was, you know, formulating his team, because he had been here longer than I had, and he understood certain things. And so we came up with a list of principles that we thought would be successful here, make someone successful here at Clemson. And so the recruiting coordinator and my associate head coach, Phil Jones, and I started recruiting to that criteria. And we said, all right, we're not going to take any kid or offer a scholarship to any kid who doesn't tick off 7 of the 10 criteria. The first one is a GPA criteria, right? So they have to be, you know, in high school, they have to have above a 3.0 GPA. I mean, if someone's below that, I mean, they can be below that, but they better be ticking off the other 8 or the other 7.
Well, that goes to your we're not professionals, we're in education value, right?
We
so
are
that
educators.
Makes sense. We're educators.
Yeah.
Okay.
No question. But it's also, you know, they want to succeed. If you have a kid who's doing well in high school, they want to succeed. For the most part, even in high school, they're not just doing it for their parents. They want to be successful at things that they're doing. And so that's what we're looking for. Having a leadership role, being a captain of a team, right? If already established leader and it doesn't have to be in your sport team, but during the recruiting process, there needs to be some evidence that they've been in a leadership role. One of the easiest ones, particularly in this generation, tell me about your job. Well, he doesn't have time for a job. He plays soccer and he's got to go to school and do his homework. And when you get to college, you're spinning a lot of plates, and if you can't keep the plates going, then something's going to crash. And having a job is important. So describe to me, what type of job you had. Even if you're a paper boy, that's what I did when I was a kid. I worked in a restaurant, I worked in a theater,
Nice.
right? But it's showing balance in your life. And that's what we're looking for. The greatest criteria you need as a soccer player is balance, athletic balance and personal balance. And so that's what we're looking to get at with this recruiting criteria.
Okay, well, I don't think I'm going to have a tough time getting my 3 teenage boys to watch this episode. However, now I'm going to force them because, by the way, the Tazi House rule is you're 14, you get a job, and you have that year round
Darn right.
until you graduate. So, and they're like, nobody else has a job, Mom, at 14. I'm like, yeah. So they're all Publix guys. Like they all work at Publix
There
supermarket, which is fantastic.
Resilient, tough.
They're learning
resilient,
customer service.
Tough, gritty. Yeah.
So now if I say, Mike Noonan says it's important, now they're going to think it's important. So thanks for that.
Yeah, no problem. But yeah, we developed those and we've recruited to that, and it's turned out to be a lot more successful than when we were just looking for talent. We were so talent shy when we took the team over in 2010 that we brought in talent without character.
Yeah,
and that's a recipe for disaster.
Right. Okay. Well, that's great, and I love the situational, and even you describing that. While people might think it's easier when you're able to recruit such great talent from all over the country, it provides some challenges. What about motivating the team? So I have to throw in this one question because Mateo gave it to me. He said, how do you get the best out of players? For example, when a player's worked hard all his life, he comes to Clemson and he's feeling the weight and pressure. Oh my gosh, I'm at the national champion. I'm playing for the national championship team. And feels the weight of that. How do you motivate team members like that?
It goes back to joy and helping them understand that it's you versus you. It's not you versus anybody else. But competition will bring it out of you, right? And I think the mentality and the mindset. Let's go back to Carol Dweck. It's the mindset that we coaches are trying to get through to the young men. And that it really is you versus you. You're talented enough to be here. Now you have to have the self-efficacy to believe I can get it done. And so we coach to that, and we coach in a very positive way to the young men that they're here for a reason. They got here for a reason. And one of those reasons is believe in yourself. And I think that's the biggest motivator there is in the world, is getting someone to believe in themselves when someone else believes in them. And it's difficult sometimes because the competition and the bar is very, very high here. And people do come into the program that I'm not sure whether I'm quite, why am I here? And fortunately at Clemson, like I said, we're very well resourced. We've got great sports performance, and there's been a lot of investment in mental health, and we've got people who help me with that in the motivation. And I think that's but when it comes down to walking in a locker room, you go back to one thing, and that's the team, and playing for Clemson, and that other centeredness, that's about more than myself. And that's motivating in and of itself.
I would imagine for a lot of players that move to the focus on others will, it just sort of shifts the focus. It's not about you, right? So get in there and do your thing. I think that's great. What about motivate? You talked about that, winning the championship last year and saying, hey, by the way, we have a lot of memories, right? How do you pick up a team, in disappointment, right? And Yeah, the 2015 season comes to mind. You made it to the finals and it didn't go your way, right? Would you say the ball sometimes goes your way and sometimes it doesn't? How do you pick
Mhm.
up the team in after times like that?
The face of the coach is really, really important at times like that. And so I'm generally maybe over the top, a little bit enthusiastic after losses or after something that isn't as tasteful as winning national championships. And again, it's really important that uh, they understand perspective, and you give them a perspective to understand that it's a game, and for you know 40 million people didn't even know you were playing the game. And I know we're disappointed right now, but there's another game, or there's another year, or there's another place for you to be successful, down the road. And just, I think it comes down to hope and giving people hope. And I think that when there's disappointment there, if you can paint a picture of hope, a realistic picture of hope,
Sure.
because I think, you can't live in a fantasy world. And we tell the truth here, and sometimes it's hard for people to hear. But I think hope. They say hope brings eternal. So that's what we try to do. I've got a little poem. I've got a little poem on my from Václav Havel on my wall here entitled "Hope."
Oh,
It's a pretty neat thing that every now and then I read the guys.
nice. I love that. It reminds me of I had this shift in my thinking as a leader, and I'm so glad you started with that. Was it's the face of the coach really means something. Um, Early in my leadership, I didn't see myself in the way that the people around me saw me, and a lot of that had to do with my title or my influence in the organization. To me, I was just the same goofy Jamie figuring things out, like whatever. And, there was a particular situation that happened where I realized, no, people are looking to you. They're going to feel a certain way because they see how you're acting. They're going to be nervous or they're going to feel empowered and excited based on how you're acting, and that you need to
Right.
create that. One time, I might have overdone it because we were going through a particularly challenging business period of time. And one of the people on my team said to me, we were in a one-on-one, he's like, can I ask you a question? Are you really that positive all the time? Is it really always, you think everything's fine? And I was like, actually, no, this is hard as hell. This is so difficult. And he said, oh, thank God, like you're real. I'm like, no, I'm just trying, and so you have to sort of balance it and be real too. So that was another learning for me.
For
Really good.
sure. That's an art of leadership right there, is being able to do those things. And when it is the hardest, and when nobody seems to understand, it's a lonely place at times. And I talked a lot about that. And the when it's that lonely and it's that hard, sometimes you want to absolve yourself of leadership, and you have to, that inner voice has to tell you, no, this is what you signed up for. And all the people who are looking to you right now need you more than ever. So
Excellent. I love that.
I've had those Sunday mornings.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Like take it somewhere else. My husband gets the brunt of how I am sometimes needing to get things off my chest, so very good. Well, I was thinking about this idea of growing other leaders. And one of the big things that come to mind is, captains, right? And especially as I hear you talk about, it happens on the field, it's decisions on the field, right? What are the best examples of leadership and captains that you've seen, and what advice would you give a player who's taking on that leadership role as a captain, whether it be at the high school level or the college level?
The best example that I won't turn my screen around, but his jersey is hanging above my desk here, that I've ever seen of a captain and watch him work. And it was when he was the captain of Everton Football Club, and I hate Everton Football Club. I'm a
Mm.
Liverpool fan, and in my office is hanging an Everton shirt.
Hmm.
So that's drastic. So he must
Wow.
have done some
Okay.
good work.
He must have.
And the guy's name is Phil Neville, and he's currently the head coach out in Portland for the MLS team in Portland. But when Phil was playing, I had the opportunity to be over with the assistant manager, and who was a very close friend of mine. And and they had just played a game, and I think they had drawn against maybe the third from bottom team. And Steve and I were driving home, the assistant manager, and the phone rings, and it's Phil Neville, the captain. And he'd just gotten off the phone with the manager, who was going ballistic and was crazy, and he didn't know why, and this and that. He wanted to talk, and Phil reminded the manager that, it's the first points they had dropped in like 14 games, and that things were going okay. So he was telling Steve what he was going to face the next morning when he got into the office. So he managed upwards. The next day, the reserve team had a game, and so we went into the facility, and they were actually playing the Columbus Crew from the U.S. who was over on tour. And nobody wants to play in the reserve game, particularly senior pros. They want to be in the first team game. So the attitude generally isn't very good. The first person at breakfast in the facility who didn't have to be there was Phil Neville with his special needs son. Greeting all the reserve team players that didn't want to be there. So the day before, he managed upwards in the management. That day, he managed downwards. And during the game I watched him play, he was the captain on the field. So he managed his peers. And it was brilliant, form of leadership. And I think that's it. That's a long story for a short answer. Great captains can manage 3 different directions: above them, to the side of them, and below them.
Amazing. I love it. I think it's a brilliant example. And by the way, I did tell Mateo and his 2 other co-captains of the high school soccer team, we play in the spring. I was like, I want to do a leadership seminar for the 3 of you. You're going to come in, and
Awesome.
he was just like, what? Really? Okay. And he actually, that's not what he said. He said, great, Mom, that sounds great, but has he scheduled it yet? No. So I'm wondering how big of a priority it is for him, but I'm going to take some of these principles and we're going to bake it in.
They need to be nudged sometimes. They need to be nudged sometimes. I was doing a little bit of that today. I have captains, but I have a leadership group that's made up of the 4 classes, and really 3. We don't have any freshmen in it generally, but I said to them today. I said to the 2 captains, the 3 captains, I said, when's a leadership group meeting? And again, that's an extra 45 minutes on their week, and they hadn't set it up yet, and it was one of those things that no, it's too important. And they finally, they're like, "Yeah, you're right, Coach. We'll get to you on Monday." I said, "Yep, okay." So it's just too important, to be able to give young people, at least, like you said, some structure, some understanding, particularly when they're in leadership roles, and and to be empathetic with the fact that those leadership roles sometimes aren't so easy.
In my leadership practice, it always occurs to me, we tend to promote people up into leadership roles because they've done something in the past, their current role. And we don't always equip them with what they're going to expect or how to be successful in this new role. And it could be in the corporate world, going from an individual contributor to a first line manager to a second line leader to a broad business leader. And it's the same thing. And so with these players that get tapped because they're demonstrating, I would say, some type of leadership on the field and with their team, and now they're asked to do it, and it's like, now what? So that's what I'm trying to figure out how to unlock.
It's like parenting. They say there's no book for parenting, right?
Oh yeah.
A lot of times this, but I will give. I mean, I love the fact we can trade books. It's called The Captain Class, and have your son pick up that. And that's a real. I give that to our captains once we name the captains every year. It's called The Captain Class. It used to be on my shelf.
Is this the one that the researcher was trying to figure out why teams win, and they went and they turned out it was the captains, and there was like 9 principles? Okay.
Correct.
I am reading that right now. I have to get him to read it. My friend Andy Snyder, whose son also plays with Mateo, gave me that book about a month ago, and so good. Okay, I'm gonna give that to Mateo.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
I didn't give it to him yet because he was busy with his summer reading, and he was enjoying those a little too much, Very
That's
good.
summer reading.
That's summer reading, man. Well, Mike, you've been extremely generous with your time, and I just so appreciate you sharing your views on leadership and what has created this incredible run at Clemson and pretty much every team that you've touched from the past. I love you sharing what has, always been there, some of the core things and what sort of evolved in your leadership over time. Is there, before you get my iconic last question, which is is there anything else that we didn't touch on today that you think we missed or we should have?
No, I think it's just a really good conversation, and every single time I have these types of conversations, which is why I enjoy doing it, it stimulates me, and I grow from it, and go full circle and go back to Carol. You asked me at the beginning, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm talking to Jamie right now, and I'm growing.
Thank you. I definitely am as well. By the way, I add another book to your list. Satya Nadella is the CEO of Microsoft. He came in 2014. And his book is called Hit Refresh, which he wrote right about when he came. And, everybody was excited when he came on board. The stock price had been stagnant for years. And everybody was like, what are you going to do? What new technology? And he's like, we're focusing on our culture. And he brought Carol Dweck's growth mindset and taught all of us senior leaders these principles and asked us to teach them to our teams, which is when I started. And so anyway, his book is really fascinating about, and, you look at, Microsoft now and the stock price is trading, I don't know, 10 times what it was back in 2014.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are like, yeah, but a lot of things happened. The internet blew up and okay, fine. But I know it was culture. So anyway, I've been practicing growth mindset. You said 14 years. Me, it's about 10 years. I feel like it's like yoga. Somehow like it's harder the more you practice it. I don't know how that happens, but I catch myself in a fixed mindset thought every day and I have to redirect it. But it's fun. It's definitely fun.
And I feel the same way. And the other thing is that when you get into the fixed mindset and you're leading people, sometimes you're putting people into boxes too. And that can be dangerous because people continue to grow and evolve. And that's the theme for our season this year, coming off the championship last year. It's #evolve. And we're not raising the bar because it can't go any higher than it went, but we're certainly raising the floor. And I think that's really good for everybody. And I'm looking forward to the two books. They'll be my two books for the season.
Well, thank you. That's great. That's great. Let me know what you think. All right. So I ask every guest one final question. If you could wrap by just giving one piece of advice about leadership, what would that be?
Listen and learn from others. Because and observe. I'd say listen, learn, and observe from other people, and then go do it your own way. So that would be my advice because there's so much to learn from other people in every environment. Some of it good, some of it bad, and then as a leader, you have to have the courage to go and do it. And I think everybody's going to have their own unique way of doing things, and that's how I've done it. I certainly it's not been perfect, but it's had a little bit of modicum of success so far through my career. So
I would say a lot.
I give that advice to anybody else. Well, thank you, Jamie.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Well, Mike, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much on behalf of all of my listeners, and best of luck to you and your team. And I'll be watching now with excitement, knowing what's going on in the background. So
yeah, and when you get up to the upstate and you get up in the Clemson area, please look us up and come to a game, and it'd be great to meet you. Not virtually, but live.
I would love
and
that.
your voice, of course.
Thank you so much.
And
I'd love that as well. I appreciate it. And by the way, if I can ever help you with anything, your daughter comes to, school down in Charleston and needs a home cooked meal, you send her my way. I don't know about if I'll do her laundry, but she can, anything else would be fine.
No, laundry, every kid has to do themselves. So they got to find that laundry service on campus that'll do it for you.
Yes, there you go. All right, Mike. Well, good luck to you.
Great speaking.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Join us every Tuesday for insider access to executive leadership.